Quick little intro before I actually just go into this video. I'm just going to mention that there's 4 episodes remaining on the 40k PR project. The Pirate Captain, the Gunslinger, the 𝗘𝘃𝗲𝗿𝘆, and the 𝗘𝘃𝗲𝗃. I will be starting doing all of the 40k PR video in that specific order that I just mentioned, which is going to be Pirate Captain right now, next episode is Gunslinger, then is 𝗘𝘃𝗲𝗃, and lastly is going to be on the 𝗘𝘃𝗲𝗃. One last thing is going to be in regards to the artwork that I did mention on my previous video that I did talk about Jaden animation. Yeah, I actually started doing a little bit more artwork on my free time, so if you actually start seeing more different types of artwork in the channel, then don't be too surprised because I've been practicing some digital art on my own. So yeah, I just wanted to mention all of that because I've been enjoying just doing art and all of that. So with all that out of the way, enjoy the 40k PR video on the Pirate Captain. Welcome to the 40k PR project. This time around, I'll be going over my Pirate Captain. Here's going to be my power rank and my stats. My gear is going to be an attack speed, movement speed on all pieces of gear. My ring is going to be a crystal level 3 ring with magic find. Orkin is going to be my ally because of movement speed. I do have the permanent torch equipped because I use this on every single class. Free range electrolytic crystal is my food because EC 300 light. Arcane and Trailblazing as my emblem, Arcane because of damage, Trailblazing because of movement speed, Conjurer's 𝗘𝗃𝗿𝘆 as my Flask because I do have high magic find and this is my Flask of choice, and the personal song Bard subclass because it's the best endgame speed farming subclass in the game. My empowered gem abilities are going to be Stinging Curse, Higher This, Class Gem, and Berserk Battler. I do have Stinging Curse because of the stats of the gem, no other reason really. Pirate this because it's the best empowered gem ability in the game, granting damage and movement speed and also very easy to proc. Class gem because it literally allows you to throw 2 first mate turrets, so there's no point in not having it. And Berserk Battler is just going to be better suited for this character, which is mainly suited for bossing. Here's going to be my Star Shard build. Already made a video in regards to my Star Shard build. If you want to go ahead and check it out, I'll leave that in the description down below. Now, my costume combination is going to be everything part of the Lightning Launcher costume. So this is including the hairstyle and the weapon style. So the Lightning Launcher costume is going to be a Pirate Captain costume, going from the 𝗘𝗃𝗿𝘆 Shindig store pack, which is a store pack from the Turkeytopia Friendsgiving event, which obviously of course originally dropped in 2022. I'll leave that link in the description down below. I already made a video in regards to this weird store pack. I don't know how the hell I managed to actually did that in one take. It's like 𝗘𝗃𝗿𝘆 Shindig. I don't know how you actually pronounce this store pack, but yeah, I just wanted to mention this one. I'll leave that in the description down below. And yeah, that's going to be everything that I do have equipped on my Pirate Captain. Now, how does the Pirate Captain fare inside U11? Well, to no one's surprise, one of the weakest class in terms of speed farming in U11. It makes sense, it's a setup class. Setup classes are built for long battles, and for speed farming you want to kill random enemies if you want movement speed buff, and you want to defeat dungeon bosses in less than 1 second once you do enter a room. Setup classes are just, unfortunately, can't do that, since they have to throw down their abilities, and those abilities start doing damage, and by the time that it takes you to do all of that, pretty much good speed farming classes can just get into a dungeon, kill the boss, and get out. And so setup classes are really not built for any of those speed farming things. That's why like having a good basic attack and no cooldown instant cast abilities are just best for dungeons, which allows you to complete the dungeons as fast way as possible. Does that mean that you cannot speed farm with this class? Well, technically yes, you can speed farm with any class in the game, which is what I'm trying to showcase in the background footage, but you will definitely going to be falling a couple of steps behind most speed farming classes, of course. The damage is definitely there, but you need to throw down turrets that target at random enemies, and then you have to level out your first mate if you want to start doing good damage, which is definitely not consistent nor fast. But yeah, anyways, let's continue with all the abilities and the basic attack. The basic attack is quite bad, sadly. The only thing that it has going for is just that it has pretty good crowd control. However, in terms of damage, it's below average at 2 times damage, and it is also the slowest basic attack in the game at 1 attacks per second at base. So it's ever so slightly slower than the no class gen Shadowhunter basic. That is quite bad considering that it does the same damage as the Shadowhunter with the class gen. So yeah, it's not really high damage and it's really slow, and despite all of that, it's also 6 block range, so it doesn't have range as an advantage. Nothing more needs to be said, it's just statistically bad. Important thing is just going to be that it is going to be very easy to maintain, energy from the passive ability, because it's the easiest way to gain energy from the passive ability with the basic attack. And in turns, it also just buffed your first mate turret, so at the very least, it's good in terms of utility. But if you are expecting this basic attack to be your main damage source, it's not good, doesn't do a lot of damage, and it's not fast, it's really slow. So imagine doing Shadowhunter class gem level of damage, but with the speed of non-class gen Shadowhunter. That's just a nightmare and a half. Or in other words, to put it into perspective, this is weaker than the pre-Shadow Spotlight Shadowhunter no class gen basic attack. It's really bad. It's just a bad basic attack, unfortunately. Anyways, let's move on to the very first ability, the First Mate. The First Mate is very strong. Unfortunately, it's also very inconsistent, since it's going to be single target, it targets at random, and if you don't have the hidden effect Abbas Yi, it's obviously of course going to target the first enemy that it sees. And of course you also need to level it up by getting the blues from the passive ability, which honestly is not too difficult to level it up. Either way, it's just inconsistency. It can go from pretty bad damage to really insane damage really fast, and if you do include the class gem ability, which allows you to throw 2 of them, this ability is just going to be absolutely ridiculous in terms of damage output. Since this ability really doesn't take any resources, like nothing, no energy, like nothing, and it only has a 1-second cooldown, so it allows you to throw down as many turrets as possible. Obviously, of course, the limit is going to be 1 turret normally, 2 turrets if you do have the class gem ability. The properties in terms of damage and attack rate is going to be varying depending on the level of the turret, which in this case is going to be 3 levels. In level 1, which is if you don't get any doubloons or if you throw down the turret, is going to be doing 2 times damage multiplier, and it will be attacking at once per second. The 2 times damage multiplier is 2 times damage at base, so that is the base damage. Once you do actually collect 3 doubloons, which is the 3 coins that you do get from the passive ability, then this turret is going to increase to level 2, which that will boost your damage by 5 times the base damage. Since the base damage is 2 times damage, 2 times 5 is 10. So the level 2 turret is going to be doing 10 times damage multiplier, and it will keep shooting at once per second. And remember that this is going to be each turret, so if you do have the class gem ability, that's 2 turrets doing the same damage at 10 times damage at level 2. Once you do pick up 3 more doubloons, then this turret is going to be reaching at its highest level, which is going to increase the base attacks per second by 3 times, so triple the base attacks per second. So base attacks per second is 1 times 3 is 3 attacks per second. Or in other words, if either of these 2 turrets are just going to be hit and an enemy is just going to get absolutely deleted. 3 attacks per second, 10 times damage multiplier, and having 2 turrets, that's just overkill at that point. But yeah, unfortunately, single target targets are random enemies unless you do have the Abbas Yi hidden effect. Which, again, if you're interested in related to everything the hidden effect, I already made a video in regards to all of the hidden effects on the Pirate Captain. The unfortunate part is that this is going to be pretty much your main damage source for dungeons for the majority of the time. You need to throw down this turret like literally every single dungeon that you do see. Again, no resource cost, and it has a 1-second cooldown. There's no point in not throwing them. So yeah, it's going to be your main damage source. Let's move on into the Pretend Pirate, which is your secondary ability or your decoy. This ability is pretty good, but it relies on having 2 things. Number 1 is energy. It shouldn't be a problem because it's the only ability that costs energy, and getting energy on the Pirate Captain is really easy because it's all about just getting the balloons. Then the second part is going to be that it relies on enemies attacking it, which is okay, but it means that you cannot use the ability in the same way that you would use something like Sun Snare from the Shadowhunter or the Crystal Pop from the Bard, where you can actually just essentially just spawn kill 𝗘𝘃𝗀𝗍 enemies. This cannot do that because you have to rely on enemy attacking the decoy, and once the enemy attacked the decoy and hit it 3 times, The decoys is going to detonate, doing damage to all enemies around it in a 7-block radius, which is almost double the amount of that of the Sun Snare. And it does 3.5 times damage, the same damage as Sun Snare Singing Crystal or the Crystal Pop. So 3.5 times damage on a 7-block radius, which is a lot and pretty okay damage. Even though it can take aggro, again, it's not good for just spawn killing Curse Skulls, which is pretty important if you want to speedrun through Curse Skull. That's why like something like Shadow Hunter is really good, or also like something like a really strong Bard is also really good, like a Musical Master Bard, because they can easily just destroy Curse Skull like immediately as soon as they spawn, and they can also kill bosses quite quickly. So that's why they make those characters really good outside of their movement speed buff, which is something that I need to mention, that this character has no movement speed buff. Should be pretty obvious. I've already made a video in regards to every single movement speed buff in the game. Pirate Captain is one of those classes that doesn't have a movement speed buff. It has a 3 base movement speed higher than every class in the game, but 3 base higher movement speed, like okay. Yeah, it's not a fast moving character, and all of the ability, as you can tell right now, it takes a little bit to set up and just get damage. First mate, you need to do damage to get the balloons, so you can actually just go ahead and just level it up so it can do actually good damage. And the Pretend Pirate, you have to wait until enemies hit the Pretend Pirate so it can detonate and do damage. It costs 64 energy, by the way, per cast, which is a lot, but again, like I just mentioned, it's the only ability that costs energy, which is a good thing. Anyways, let's move on into the Man of War, the ultimate ability. This is where most players think that the main damage source comes from the Pirate Captain, but in reality, is the first mate turrets. The first mate turrets are doing way much more damage than Man of War, especially for dungeons. However, Man of War is the definition of an ability that looks way stronger than it really is. And it makes sense, just look at this. Croissant! Sorry, but not sorry at the same time, but the amount of explosion I just had to do it's just ridiculous when you look at it. But yeah, it looks really strong. Anyways, I'm going to be talking about properties. First of all, the damage. It does 6.5 times damage multiplier, and it shoots once per second. It will last for 15 seconds, and the radius of each shot is going to be 4.5 blocks. And of course, it does have the standard 40 seconds of cooldown. And the important thing, which really doesn't matter for dungeons, is that there's no limit in how many Man of Wars that you can throw, so you can just keep throwing Man of War like crazy if you have the ultimate ability active, which will allow you to do that if you do have something like the Chronomatic Emblem, which again is good for bossing, not good for dungeons, because obviously of course it takes a long setup if you want to just go ahead and just keep throwing Man of Wars. There's no point in doing that, because bosses, by the time that you throw down your second ult, the boss is already dead. And yeah, those are every single property on Man of War. On paper, really not that strong. It looks strong and it feels like it does a lot of damage, but in reality, in terms of damage, it's average 6.5, shoots 1 per second, which is not too fast, and none of that really mattered because it's just extra damage, and being extra damage is good for obvious reason. In terms of like the ability on its own, it really doesn't do a lot of damage on its own. It just needs other stuff to help it out. So obviously, of course, it's just going to feel much powerful because there's other stuff that is going to be doing damage alongside it. Normally, I just use this ability for bosses mainly to help out in just doing more consistent damage, since in terms of Curse Skull, you can use Pretend Pirate, and pretty much Pretend Pirate is just going to delete Curse Skull once it detonates. And Man of War, it just can be good for bosses that spawn minions, which happens like all the time. And yeah, that's the whole kit on the Pirate Captain. You can see that everything is just set up to do damage, with the exception of the ultimate ability, which has a 40-second cooldown, which is rough to say the least. But despite all of that, I don't know why, I just enjoyed this class from time to time. I remember that one time I tried to use this class and tried to see if I could just reach 300 dungeon per hour pace, which I failed miserably in U11 before the Sunrise update, which I got as high as around 286 or something like that. But I was enjoying messing around with this class, and honestly, I don't believe this class needs a big of a buff. In terms of DPS, it's still one of the highest DPS classes in the game. I feel the only thing that they could do is just improve that DPS rather than improve the speed, because it will just make the character a little bit more interesting. So anyways, this is going to be a good damaging class, but it's going to be slow in terms of dungeons because it doesn't have anything to improve the slow playstyle that this character has. That's everything for me. Once again, like everything regarding this series, this is all opinionated based. It's just my own personal opinion. If you have your own personal opinion, leave it in the comment section down below. Thank you once again for watching. Thank you for sticking as always. Once again, there's going to be only 3 episodes remaining. The Gunslinger is going to be next, then Tomb Raider, and last episode is going to be the Chloromancer. And yeah, so stay tuned for all of that. Leave a like if it does help out with the YouTube's algorithm. Also subscribe. We're on the road to 4.7k. And yeah, I hope to see you guys next time. Take care and keep on hunting. And this has been the 40k PR video on the Pirate Captain.